Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Your Noy Lifestyle. I'm your host, Zabel Danielle, and today we are joined by Lisa, aka the OG Original Goddess. Hi, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
So, I'm really excited to have you here today. We've known each other via Instagram for a couple years, and
Mm-hmm.
would you post? I used to buy your crystal jewelry when I was up
Hmm.
in Bay. Um,
Yes.
so, let's just hop right in. Can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Bustillo. I am a crystal jeweler, energy worker, Reiki healer. I actually even started diving into my roots, which I actually feel kind of ignited more about the direction I'm going in, kind of leading into like historical ancestral work. And a lot of that is rooted around something called hilo. And basically, that is just, a lot of things that as Filipinos we've done before the modernization of the medical industry. And so my purpose is aligned all in that. And there's a lot of other things that I kind of also involve myself into, but all in all, I'm really for the arts. I'm really for the spirit. So anything around that is what I'm all about. So.
That's super dope. And you're still making crystal jewelry as well?
Yes, I'm actually wearing one of my pieces right now. It all started with pendants, but I do a variety of things now with earrings, rings. I've been experimenting with cuffs, like lip cuffs, nose cuffs. So yeah, anything adorned for the body.
Yeah, I know you're always super creative with all the styles that I see. So I love it.
Thank
Keep, and
you.
I think you were the first person I've seen who made the crystal hoop earrings, right?
Yes, I actually kind of was really kind of explain like marketing with that because that was the first time I did something in that, realm just because when I was purchasing jewelry for myself before I started the journey, it was something that I only did for myself because I was like, I don't really see like, the snapback hoops, like the big snapback hoops that I used to wear growing up. And when I actually started making them, those took off really well, especially in the Bay Area, and that's kind of another way that my momentum kind of stuck. And like I love seeing it on people now, and I love when I see people like going out with them, or even just in their own home space doing their own thing.
Yeah, I'm sure that feels amazing to see your personal style on a lot of the women and people in the Bay Area or
Yeah.
wherever you ship to, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you're diving into a lot of your culture more, and that actually really piqued my interest on your Instagram page, which you've been posting about. So, do you want to talk more about like the importance of combining like spirituality and your culture together and how it got you to where you are right now?
Yeah, I actually feel even it was something that when you say like practicing your culture's roots into spirituality, I feel like now the understanding I have is that they literally go hand in hand. Whereas, but I do feel like it's a process. I understood how before. I mentioned crystal jewelry and Reiki before because that's kind of the order of how it went in my discovery, right? Like my diving into, and so I think that just has to do with a lot of people, not like kind of their families assimilating into the American culture. So when we talk about like, oh, diving into your culture and mixing with spirituality, it's like I feel it kind of takes time to realize that because our cultural practices and any culture, I've done like a lot of research too with like other cultures, and everything is literally rooted in like a very spiritual practice as like an everyday thing, as like a family thing. And so within like the Filipino culture, that came because I was picking up a lot of things and I was realizing like, wait, where is like people that look like me, or not even just that, but like where, how do I tie this into something like in my own home and space or with my own people, or like when I'm talking about things like when I got Reiki certified, it was interesting because I'm like, this is a Japanese practice. And although I've kind of taken the respect and the ways to honor that, it made me curious. And so it was hard, but I think just when you're on that journey of like aligning yourself to what you're supposed to be doing, I can't even really put a finger on what it was exactly, but I do remember finding somebody who I knew from a mutual friend in the San Francisco Bay Area who had taught like a Filipino medicine class, like ancestral medicine class. And so I reached out and I said, is there anything that I could take? But it was during the pandemic. And so a lot of resources were hindered. A lot of things were not really accessible. Um, but then they mentioned something about Gila. And so I said, where would you recommend for me to like dive into that? I didn't really understand it really at first, because if you actually speak to other Filipino Americans or Filipinos, the word Hilo is actually known as like massage. It's like, so it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I guess that's something that's tied into it. But then, with courses that were recommended by that mutual, kind of summed up a lot. Whereas like, even though there's so many things to like go about with it, there was a source that they had told me to reach out to, like a school basically, to learn about Hilot. And I enrolled in two different ones that that person recommended. And through those schools, I had basically enrolled in like classes that like dove into the facts about it, the practice of the history. And that, as kind of simplified as it sounds, that's really actually what happened. And it it opened a lot for me, because no matter how much you Google about it, at least specifically in like Filipino culture, at least, no matter how much you Google about it, no matter how many people you kind of talk to, or elders, because a lot of our immediate elders are not really in tune with that. um there's really nothing else, like there's really nowhere else. So when I found these schools, it kind of, it really like awoke a light in me. And then it kind of took off, because all the information I was getting was really teaching a lot about energy. It was really teaching a lot about purifying, connecting back with nature, praying to our ancestors again, finding the connection in that with everything you do, and just like paying respects to the universe. And there's other things too that are more detailed, but all in all, I feel even just the act of like realizing that despite how limited things can be, um, I feel like it feels very special, because in this day-to-day life, like in America, sometimes it's like it doesn't feel spiritual when you're working, when you're kind of taught to do things in a systematic ass way. So I feel like when I see like my culture and my practices of like healing, or like when I'm unlocking it by asking and like actually making it an intention to find things, um I feel like it heals something like in the lineage. I feel like also I've seen a lot of people grow curious about it, and it reminds me of the times that I didn't really know much about things too. So even in that sense, to me, it's very spiritual, and it's very healing in myself, because I think it unlocks and it connects people that have that yearning too, or like that, like they don't even realize that they are kind of missing. And it kind of brings that power out in each and one of us, or even as like a whole group in society.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like knowing your history and knowing who you are and knowing more about your culture just helps you understand yourself more. And then it feels a lot more connected if you can bring it into your work as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that you can share that with people, because um, I know a lot of my Filipino friends have said that like culturally it's very religious, and so it's hard to go from like religion to spirituality. So have you felt like this has helped the people who are kind of disconnected from spirituality for that reason, kind of connect with it a little bit more?
Yeah, I actually really noticed how common that is. And it's it'll get a little tricky, because sometimes the things I will say, I've seen it like either offend people, or I could see them being a little hesitant, because they don't want to, create something, especially when we're talking about like spirituality, other dimensions, other deities, realms, that in the physical world, if you are not, in practice, right? If you're not like protected, if you are not kind of knowing what you're doing, it can seem scary. Like it might seem like it's like you're going to be bargaining with something that you can't handle. And so obviously, if they're taught this is wrong, or worshiping crystals is like against what like the religion will say, which is like Catholicism in a lot of family households, it can get actually like like it can be really what's it called, it can be on both end of the spectrums, where I've noticed it either liberate a lot of people because they realize, like, you know, due to colonization and things, some of these things actually are not rooted in our practices, because I feel like it's like the colonization and religious aspect actually is the complete opposite of what our ancestors were doing, right? So there's like this like disconnect, because a lot of times the ways that the colonization has affected many generations, it's wiped it out. So now it's like we see everything that was actually ours as evil, as kind of backwards, as you shouldn't be doing this. But then I feel like that's what creates that disconnect in our spirituality now, because it's like, you know, all these kind of all the baggage that we have from viewing it that way can make it like, you know, farther and farther. And so it's like when we can kind of dismantle that, and even if it's like people that still, you know, believe in Catholicism and practice that, but they still have like a understanding and open mind. I've worked with people too that have actually benefited from just like balancing. And I feel like that's what it's all about too, where it's like not necessarily picking one side or the other, but it's like at least being balanced and understanding, because I don't think there's X or Z. I think it's like X, Y, and Z. You know, I think it's like a whole bridge of things that can teach us to come collectively. But I do see it's like a lot of work. And I saw that in myself too. I think when I go back to even my journey as like a little girl who um, sometimes would be kind of troubled in church, like it never really resonated with me. So growing up, it was actually easy for me to like kind of transition out. But it was hard because it's like you have these influences that tell you like in a very harsh way that other things are wrong. But then as I got older and I became an adult and started to explore, I realized, you know, it's everything that you make it, you know. And so I try to tell like in kind of like the platform I have, it's like everything is perspective. So just align with yours. Um, but I used to kind of hit it hard, like with a lot of things that I felt. And then I had to realize everyone's on a different level, everyone's on a different path, despite our, you know, connection and culture. But in a way, it's like, you know, we're all connected. So there's so many different layers of everything. And so I just try to remain like, you know, truthful about like the things I discover, which is more towards like energy, more towards like keeping like a pure heart. You know, doing all the research, like you say, like finding the historical backgrounds and doing all of those things to honor it. But you know, being and remaining like an understanding of what your journey is saying. So it's like you don't get caught up in the physical world, because you know this is all very temporary anyways.
Yeah, I agree with all of that 100%. And I feel like a lot of that just stems from fear of the unknown. We like automatically fear things that we aren't familiar with or we don't know about. And all of that seems new. And when they talk about it in movies or show it in movies, they just make it seem so ridiculous, like anything spirituality related. And so it's like you said, just be open-minded and listen to other people's perspectives. We can all learn from one another. And at the end of the day, we all have like the same goal, I think.
Yeah.
We all are honoring whatever feels right to us, trying to be better people, I think, and like all of these things. So there's no reason to bash or look down on one another, but I think we should just learn.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that you're teaching that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you what is the difference between Halo and Reiki?
So Hila is let me actually repeat how in like modern day, you know, Filipino culture, Hila is known as, you know, just being massage and kind of like the spa treatment, body work. But in my classes that I was enrolled in to dive deeper into that, Hila is actually it's a whole I'll explain it. It's basically what we perceive modern medicine to be with like hospitals. Like everything that's health is just like hospitals, medications, you know, doctors. And that's kind of what Hila was before colonization. It was anything of that sort. So it's it's herbalism, you know, it's prayer, it's actual body work, but not necessarily limited to massage. Like it can be bone work, you know, people that can like set broken bones or do things to your body to release either a bad spirit or like a, let's say like a curse that was put on you. So there's a lot of like spiritual ties with Hilo being like treatment, right? Treatment, any sort of treatment. So with that, there's so many different, and that's just like, very limited way of describing it, but, just to kind of keep it concise. But, and within that, there's so many different branches. Like how I said, there's bone setters, there's people who do body work, there's people who are more into like the actual like spell casting, or like the field with plants, and there's so many different things that because also it was so long ago, not many specifics about it were recorded. A lot of things were passed down through generations. So that's Hilo. Reiki is a form of energy healing through what's it called? Yeah, a form of energy healing either through non-touch or touch on the body through a practitioner's hand that originated in Japan. And I actually thought it was interesting because I was before I started diving into my own culture and I was called to Reiki, I had recently found out I have like Japanese blood in my family, like within my great grandparents, or I forgot what my mom asked me when I was talking to her. But yeah, I feel those two may have like their differences, but because just ancient practices of focusing on energy, focusing on the spirit, Reiki might actually have more to it. I just know that it's also been kind of constructed into like a modern capitalistic practice. So I aim to decolonize my Reiki training too, and like dive deeper and learn more, because at the moment I feel like it's been more intuitive. Whereas Hilo, I've been actually in courses and I've been like diligently going through it. Whereas Reiki, I kind of let it be, just because I also saw the hype around Reiki and like what's it called? In like a more common setting. So
nice. So do you incorporate both of them together in a healing session? Or
I actually have had people who booked, Reiki session after receiving like physical Hilo from me, and I've made people falling asleep, and it feels so good. Like seeing them really just reap the benefits of all this this healing that I'll be really happy to like give to them, because even though they are different, like I said, they can kind of be incorporated in different ways. I've tried to do both and experimenting with like blending it, but then also like, okay, let's try to like leave them respectively as is. But I've noticed that it's like within any kind of practitioner in like the field of working with the spirit, working with the mind, working with the soul, it's okay to play around and be intuitive, just as long as like that intention is there to always kind of remain teachable and like remain like keeping your practice sacred. So
yeah, I love that.
thank you.
What was your experience like taking the leap from like regular 9 to 5 or just a regular government job or full job to working for yourself?
Oh, it's crazy because I didn't have a choice. It was during the pandemic. I feel a lot of people can feel me on that. 2020, I basically, as soon as everything was hitting for what was it? The quarantine, right? Quarantine shutdowns.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of it. I was already in motion with everything. But at that period, I was definitely in that mindset that like, oh, this is a side hustle. This is, this is cute and fun. But, I was just in that like paradigm of just thinking this had to be seen as something like lesser. And so when I actually lost my job due to having the quarantine shutdowns, and I work with kids, so at that time it was really serious and I was not allowed to come back to work even months at a time. And then especially after me not wanting to participate in the vaccine, it was like, it almost felt really hopeless. But, I was still enjoying what I was doing, but I feel I kind of had to have that moment, like, lose your job so that you don't put that at the forefront and that like making it the highest like pinnacle of your life, because at that time I was, because oh, this is paying me money, it's getting me through college, and it wasn't a bad job. I loved the kids, they grew on me. But then I was kind of like in a situation where, looking back, I see why it had to happen, because I basically had to believe in myself to pay, my car, make some food, to get me through, even though we were receiving, all the extra financial help. It was like, this can only go so far. And so being in community really brought my spirit up. It really helped me see how that can bypass this like this formula that we're put in to just make money and be okay with that, and be told the salary that you're supposed to. But in reality, I was making my own salary, and so it was like a lot of accidents. And I think that was the reason why, to me, like these spiritual practices, these spiritual you know, like the norms I've created around spirituality being my life versus what I used to think about it. Like, oh, this is something that I can just do on Sundays, or, like self-care Sundays. And so when it kind of became like, my income, but not really like my income to think of it like that, like it's my source of money. Like I really had to like change my wording and like my belief. And so this is just abundance, and my abundance is fueling me because I'm on this path. I'm on this intentional path of like being more conscious, and being forced through a set of obstacles to handle if I was really about it. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, yes, I'm about it. So every moment I could, even the ones I had to repeat within those cycles, it brought out ugly stuff. And it still tested me to the point though that like I proved myself every time. And so I kind of stick by all these experiences I've ever had, even to this day, where it's different now because I'm kind of going into another corporate setting, but in a different phase where, I was in that phase of just being self-employed for so long that, you can't really stay in one thing. And so it's taught me, after losing my job and working and actually like, buying my first car under my name because of just like what I've done through the business and getting my name in the Bay. Then I started reaching in places in LA. I sell sometimes like internationally, that it's like, it's a slow, steady process, but it's going to always change.
Yeah.
And so I think staying in flow with just changing and like listening more than trying to direct so much has made it really successful, really enjoyable, like a whole, like really a life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. You said a lot of things that I think are really important, and I was going to ask you about anyway, so it's perfect. You mentioned how like it just kind of happened and you just flowed through it, and I think that that's one of the major things that like I want the world to know, that we kind of have to learn and allow ourselves to flow through whatever life hits us with. Because it's whenever we try to like hold on and control it and be like,
Yeah.
no, we're supposed to go this way. It's
Mm-hmm.
no, it's not. And if you keep trying to go that way, something worse is going to make you like steer that way. Like the universe is going to throw something at you. So you're like, all right, let's do this.
And you literally have to face that because it's like, oh, you think, and then you really get your ass handed. It's like, I should have never said that. But then it's part of the, it's part of that because you get to kind of humble your ego. But like, I seen a post recently today where it was talking about like, there's this phase where we think our ego is so bad and we have to kill it, but it's like, really, you actually have to kind of just like balance, like back to the beginning where we were talking about just like not here. It's like it's balance, like work with it, let it drive you, but like don't let it take control, and just like like flowing, like use it as the driving force because you need it in this physical world. But I think you made a good point, and that's very real.
And you mentioned how like you just kind of keep rolling through the experiences, and I think through the experiences and not getting, even though it's okay to kind of like get lost for a second and like a hiccup, as long as you don't stay there, I think being able to maneuver through those hiccups helps build, like, for me at least, build my confidence and like let you realize that you're way more resilient and powerful than you think, so that when your previous you might have thought you couldn't do something, but like you with this, you worked your way through it, so now it just keeps leveling you up. And I don't know, that's how I feel every time I think.
I actually think too, with the whole, understanding like your roots, or understanding kind of like with no matter what it is you do, I think specifically, obviously, if we go into our own individual cultures, it helps us like, reconnect, but then it also helps you like open your eyes to the similarities in other ones, or being able to respect them, because now you're just like, whoa, if my history is so beautiful, like think of these other like different ways that other people from all these places around the world can like celebrate or do something. And I feel like sometimes it's like, if you take away like some of the specifics, like a lot of it is the same, like, you know, like just praying to our ancestors, like respecting the land, you know, appreciating music. And then that part when you're talking about like elevating, it's like really being kind to yourself and loving yourself again, because in this system, like they want you to hate yourself, they want you to hate your life, they want you to be like silencing your soul. But like when you bypass that and you stop giving a shit, like you really start treating yourself the way you should, and then your ancestors like, yes, you know, they're kind of in a way, when you start treating your energy the way you need to, it's like you open these doors, and it's not like, oh, here's a gift. It's more just like you're seeing it, you know, you're moving how you should, and it's like these blessings you get to receive more, and like those elevations kind of come easier, because now you stop being like a person that's like robotic, and you start actually going into energy, which is what we're supposed to be moving in. And you know, that's kind of the whole reason why it's like it can seem hard, because it's like you've kind of been, you know, in a program, but then like the whole part of like spirituality is like breaking that, because it's like we are not computers, you know.
Yep. We are not computers. We're meant to like go through all these different cycles. Like life, every single aspect of life that we go through is a cycle of some sort, whether it's something, a pattern within you, a relationship you have, a job, like all of that. Life is just a cycle of life and death. And I think that we just have to learn to work through those things and realize that we all have emotions to flow through those things, and we have to balance out those emotions as well, rather than like you said, try to silence them or pretend they're not there, or just like hold on to them, because they make us bitter, and then it just keeps us at this low level.
Yes. Have you, because I know also like you've when you moved to Vegas, when was that actually?
2020. I moved during the middle of like
Yeah, because
quarantine.
I remember when you were out, like we had, was it, did we meet at a what's it called, a creatives connection in Oakland, or was it?
We met at a hike, and actually, I don't think
Yes,
we
that's right.
ever even actually. I don't think you were at the hike I was at. We were all in a group chat, and so like
Yes, I
we were
remember. I remember
talking.
this.
And then COVID hit and all that stuff. Hiking kind of stopped, and I moved, and I knew that I still wanted to talk to you because you always
Hmm.
post all this great stuff that I feel in alignment with. So I knew
Thank
you had some
you.
gems to drop.
Yeah, so was that the time you were already kind of, because I knew you were selling like your wolf packs, and now I've even seen you, I think it was a sun catcher and like your journal, that I'm like, wow, I don't even know if you were actually in the process of doing this when you were in the Bay. Yeah, so when I seen you and started like seeing you kind of grow your brand, and you were already doing like episodes, I was curious too, was the pandemic kind of the fuel behind that, since it allowed kind of more creative freedom, or did you happen to lose a job in my similar experience, or what was your kind of story?
No, actually, I didn't lose my job. I actually was able to keep my job throughout it.
Mm.
But so I planned on like starting something. I wanted to help people. I wanted to create a safe space because I ended a really long toxic relationship in the end of 2017. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had to just like isolate, rebuild, learn myself, learn why I got there, how to not get there, like all of these things. And then after that, I decided I wanted to start my business. And maybe a couple months after I started my business, like brainstorming it, my younger cousin committed suicide. And so I wanted, it was really important to me to make a safe space for people to talk about emotions and like not being okay, and like just learning to be human and recognize as part of our human experience. So that's what kicked it off. But then I wanted it to be, it just kind of snowballed. I wanted it to be more than just a podcast. And so I started making the sage bundles, my wolf packs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, I wanted it to be more than that. And so
Right.
journaling was really important to me on my journey of finding myself and rediscovery. And so I think everything starts with self-reflection, and I wanted to create a journal for people to have questions to learn about themselves, because they're hard, and like who wants to do that? But they're there for you whenever you're ready. And that's kind of how it started. And now I'm just like, well, I'm trying everything.
Yeah, and I see that you're doing sound healing too. I'm like, wow, I love, I kind of I kind of can see where you were going with just like the flow of things, but it's like the different like things you're diving into kind of relate, and they're all, for that safe space for people to just, unwind, relax, heal themselves, do what they need. And I've never really seen like a personalized journal like that from somebody that I personally knew, so it was really dope seeing that personalized, because I love writing too. But I'm a type of person where I'll just like write things on random pieces of paper. So the fact that you made that, I was like, wow, like she really did that, and that's really cool. That's really cool.
Thank you.